Good morning, my friends. Good morning, good morning. It's morning where I am now. I'm on the West Coast. And you'll see that it's sort of obvious that I'm somewhere else. Um, I am visiting a friend and on vacation on the West Coast. And so uh, I come to you from the beautiful state of Oregon. Um, Tuesday, October 24th. I'm really, really looking forward to talking about this topic and dispelling some myths that I think probably do more to undermine our self confidence than just about anything. um, and before we get started, though, if you would be so kind as to let me know that you're here in the comments section, that's always really helpful to me so I know who I'm talking to. Um, and I also have some questions that were posed to me um, on the thread about this topic. So I'm going to address a couple of those questions as well. Hey Genevieve, hey Dan, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope that my sound is okay and picture is what it is. I'm using it's all on my laptop as opposed to I have a lovely camera at home, and I have my Sennheiser 416 that I usually have set up for our lives. So I'm just doing with MacBook Pro camera and microphone built-ins. So as long as everything sounds okay, that's great. Hey, John. Nice to have you. And Dan, thank you for letting me know that it's all okay. Okay, let me close out my mail, which is very noisy. Um, and let us get to the topic at hand. So we are we're talking about keeping our perspective when it comes to how much we're booking. This is a really, I feel like this weighs on everyone's mind all the time because by and large, nobody's ever booking enough, right? That we all have that in common. I think there are very few of us who are like, whoa, slow down with the bookings. I just can't handle anymore. I suppose it happens for some. There was only one time when I felt that way, but it happened to be the week that I got COVID and it just was so sick and got more bookings than I could handle. But that's customarily I would have been just fine with those bookings, but I was so sick. COVID hit me in a weird way. I was just nauseated. So my voice was fine and everything, but I just had this general nausea, malaise, and it was torturous working. But otherwise, I'm always up for more work, as I'm sure everyone else is. Um, so let me start by saying that there's this mythic number that there's this mythic percentage, right? You know, booking 1 in 10, 10% of what you read, ought to be what people are booking, right? And some people even say 20%, right? John, you asked the question that you had heard someone say that 10 to 20% is a realistic expectation of what we're booking according, in relation to how much we're reading. And I don't know who said that to you or, um, you know, from what piece of the voiceover business they come from, um, how long they've been at it, whether they're represented, where they find their work, all that, or whether it's casting people or what have you. My experience is different, and I would say again that the 10% uh, is an old from an old paradigm, and 20% is I don't know what that's from. That feels like wow, that's upper echelon kind of booking ratio. Two out of every 10, 2 out of every 10 auditions. That is that's rarefied air, I want to say. So as I have thought about this, and I've thought about, because I've done this for a long time, right? I was like, I'm almost at 40 years. I'm 38 years in, right? So I've been at it for a few decades, and I can measure things. Um, I'm not a statistician, um, but I do have good sense memory, and and in the 80s and the 90s, I can say that I was booking about 1 in 10. And there were people who were booking more than me, more than I booked. Um, but booking 1 in 10 was like I was I lived in rarefied air then. Like I was one of the really fortunate ones, and I was considered, and was not just considered, but was a working person. And I was making a good living, and my living each year was increasing. Um, and all of those jobs were union jobs, right? So you could book things, and you would get, if you booked a TV commercial, you got residuals. If you booked a campaign, you had kind of constant weekly work that was going to air, and some of those things, as reading on a commercial campaign, also had residuals. So you're making a lot more money per session, per booking, right? So for me, the 10 to 20% is an older paradigm. It was before the internet. It was before anybody had home studios. It was when people in voiceover, primarily, there certainly were smaller markets, advertising markets, where people worked, but they worked within those markets, right? But New York, Chicago, LA were the places where people had really big careers, national careers, all that kind of stuff. So, and consequently, the competition was a lot more fierce, if you will. There are just fewer of us doing it. Um, but that meant, I mean, I used to always say, like, if I went to a place like the Voicecaster in Burbank, and there were 10 women reading on this particular spot, we were the only 10 women reading on it. And so your chances are literally 1 in 10. And anybody in the room, we all knew anybody in the room could do the job. Everybody was capable of doing it. And so it's like, when is it your turn? It became that kind of a thing. And so that paradigm, that doesn't hold to today. It just doesn't hold. I can now read on a piece of commercial copy where I might be reading with 100, 200, 500 people, because so many commercials, and I really am speaking kind of strictly to commercial work at the moment. Other stuff this applies to as well, but commercial is really, it's because it's such a bread and butter genre in voiceover. Um, Casting directors throw a very wide net. And so they're sending a piece of copy to 20 agents across the country, maybe more, and asking for their 10 to 20 best women. How many more people am I reading against? You know, it's different. It's a different world. So anybody who's telling you that, yeah, it's reasonable to expect a 10% booking ratio, it's not. It's just not. The market, while it is flooded with new work and new mediums, right? Again, I know I repeat myself in this way, but it's important, right? We don't just have the four networks that we're reading for: ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. That's not it. We've got, streaming services. We've got cable stations. We've got, YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, commercials that are made specifically for these platforms. So there's so much more work available to us. And the market is also flooded with voiceover talent. Flooded. with voiceover talent. So how can this not affect the ratio? So I did a little reconnaissance of my own booking ratio. Okay, so I make a living doing voiceover. I don't make a uh, I don't make an extraordinary living. I make a living. And some months are lean. Some years are lean. Um, so I looked back at my number of auditions and my number of bookings from 2020 through 2023, which is really interesting because, of course, 2020, for at least 2 years, was highly affected by COVID, and which for voice actors, depending upon the area of work you participate in, is it was both a blessing and a curse. We could certainly do our work from home, which was great, right? And if you didn't have a home setup, you better get one, right? It's hard for me to believe that there are any voice actors out in the world who don't have a home setup, but people in LA, New York, Chicago, sometimes they don't, and they grew accustomed to going into the agency and for auditions, and didn't really work in the realm of pay to play or anything like that. Uh, so it was both and, we got more work, but also animation, video games, that kind of stuff really kind of came to a halt for a while until they figured out that they could record people from home and all of that good stuff. So, but I digress. So I went back and I looked, and I want to share with you my numbers. Okay. And I say this to you as a person who is working in voiceover and making a living. And I would say, what does that mean? I was about to say making a modest living. What does that mean? Depends upon where you live. I moved to Tennessee because because the living I was making could not afford me a life in Los Angeles. But housing in Los Angeles is it's 5 to 10 times as much as many, many places in the country, right? In the rest of the country. So I feel like I will say I make a good living, not a great living. I don't have endless supplies of money. I have to budget. I have to choose sometimes between this thing or that thing, you know, like normal people, you know. Let's dispel the myth of, there are very, very few uh, uh, voice actors who are making a huge bucket of money. There just aren't that many. It's like any other piece of the business. Most on-camera actors are barely making a living, if at all, right? And so we see stars and we go, oh, they make millions. Actors make millions. No, no, they don't. They don't. A few in the stratosphere make millions, but nope. So this is why I always refer to myself as being a journeyman actor. I am. I have to audition. I have to work. I rely on residuals, and um, and contracted clients, which would be affiliate work, right? So let me get to my numbers here, okay? Let me pull up my little thing here. Okay, so I will say to you that these numbers aren't. This is going to sound strange, but these numbers aren't necessarily precise or accurate, if you will, but they're consistent. And that's what matters. There's a consistency here. I know how many auditions that I have read in 2023, and I know how many auditions I read that I turned in 2022. 2021 and 2020, I'm remembering because I tossed those folders out, so I don't have an exact count, but I remember them being fairly consistent and from year to year. So here are my numbers. In 2020, I turned in 875 auditions. There were plenty of auditions I did not turn in, okay? And we'll talk about that in a minute. I had what I would call 38 new bookings. Okay, so um, this does not mean my affiliate clients, which I book in a particular year. I'm contracted to them. I'm still on that contract. I work for them every month, but I don't count it as a booking. It's a session, but it's not a booking, right? Okay, so 38 bookings out of 875 auditions. That's 4.3%. That's the ratio. 4.3%. Okay. In 2021, kind of in the height of COVID, I turned in 1,000 auditions, 1,000. And again, there were auditions I did not submit, either because I missed them, I missed the deadline, I got lazy, they weren't right for me. There's a number of reasons why I don't turn things in. Um, in 2021, I had 44 new bookings. Okay, that's 4.4%. Okay, in 2022, this is where we get more accurate, but the ratios are there. What do I want to say? The ratios are consistent. Okay, so in 2022, I turned in 950 auditions, and I had 35 bookings. That's 3.6%. So it dropped a little bit in 2022. Um, Although I believe in 2022 my income went up, because what kind of bookings are they? Do they have residual income, right? Like, all bookings are not equal. 2023, this is interesting. Okay, so wait, 2022, 950 auditions, 35 bookings. That's 3.6% ratio. Okay. In 2023, this year, I have turned in, we're nearing the end of October. I have only turned in 435 auditions. Okay. And that I can very clearly attribute to the fact that the first third of the year, I I was out. My stepmother died. I was flying to Alaska several times. Then my dad died, flying back and forth a couple of times. And during that period of time, I just was like, yeah, I'm not turning things in. I didn't bring my gear. I'm not going to bring my gear while we're all talking about what the service is going to be like, And excuse me, I'm going to go read an audition. I didn't do it. Life is has more important things sometimes, right? And that's certainly among them. So 435 auditions to date, right? And 15 new bookings. Again, I'm not counting my affiliate work. Um, so even so, that ratio is 3.4%. So from 2021 to 2020 to 2021, that's off by a percentage point, 1 percentage point, right? But by and large, it's still pretty consistent. But uh, but you get the idea, right? 10%, 20%. I am definitely live in the world of I'm not on pay to play. Um, I work strictly from an agent, and I get auditions sent to me. Okay. So that certainly accounts for the high volume. My agents believe in me and trust that what they send to me I can do. There are some things that slip by, and it's like I'll get stuff and it's like, yeah, we want an adult to do a teen boy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not that person. I don't do that. So pass. You know. So, so you get the idea. Now in 1987, in 1994, if that was my booking ratio, I think there was a higher expectation. Um, but there were also fewer auditions that I was reading in a certain sense, right? So this notion, I think, this expectation that we should have a 10% to 20% booking ratio is out of whack. It's just out of whack. It speaks to that, and then it also speaks to how many auditions are you getting? Because if you're only reading two or three pieces of copy per week, it's going to be a very long time before you book something. And you're not going to make a living. And this is why I sort of beat the drum of audition, audition, audition. Try to seek out opportunity wherever you can find it, while at the same time it needs to be opportunity that's right for you. And I want to share a story about another voice actor in this context because he was a high earner, a big booker in the 90s and 2000s, high six figure, low seven figure earner. And then, of course, the industry changes, blah, blah, blah. And he switches agencies, and his bookings just drop, right? But he has a ton of auditions coming at him, right? He's overwhelmed by the number of auditions coming his way, and his booking ratio has dropped. So he's trying to make sense of it. Like, I suck. What's wrong with me? How come, how come I'm not booking anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And so had a conversation with his agent, who said, look, we're sending you everything that we think that you might be right for, but you may look at all these things and say, yeah, I think I'd be really, really great at three of these. Like, I really would have a shot. Like, this really speaks to me. This is really me. And the agent said, read those three. If you're so overwhelmed by the number of bookings that by the number of auditions that you have, only read the ones that are really bullseye pieces for you. And so he did that, kind of exhaled, could spend more time on the auditions that he thought were truly right for him. And he started booking more. And consequently, his booking ratio increased, right? He was reading fewer things, but they were right for him. And so he was booking more of them, right? So each of us has this delicate balance to try to figure out, right? And we have to get rid of this idea that, well, we have to combine the ideas of searching for opportunity wherever you can find it, auditioning as much as you can, but making sure that you're auditioning for things that are right for you. Because if I am reading a ton of things that call for a 20-year-old female, I'm not going to book any of them because I don't sound like a 20-year-old female. So it's a delicate balance that each of us has to be mindful of as we're looking at what we're reading, where we're seeking out our opportunities, et cetera, right? And in order to hold on to your perspective, to hold on to your sense of your own talent and your own capacity and capability, we have to look at all these things as a detached observer of the details of our career, right? We can't invest ourselves emotionally in the number of auditions that come in. It's like we have to look at them in a detached sort of way. Like, is this right for me? Huh. Wow, that looks like a great spot. You know what? The spec isn't right for me. Pass. Like, I don't want to get attached emotionally to the idea of, well, it's a really good, well-written spot, and I know I'm not really the right spec for it, but maybe I should read it because you never know. It's like, all right, you can do that. It's going to affect your ratio, right? It's going to use up time. Um, why are you spending time on things that aren't right for you? It's a waste of energy, right? And the more we can focus our energy on the things that are right for us, the greater our opportunity, the greater our chances of booking the thing are. So I hope that all makes sense. I would love to know if any of you have any questions about this. It doesn't look like it at the moment. I'm hoping that things are all still going according to plan. It still says I'm live. Uh, so let me know your thoughts. And if you have any particular questions about that, go ahead and write them in the comment section. And I'm going to address these other couple of questions that folks had. Let me see. I feel like John Gardner, this was your question, right? That you said that you heard a prominent leader in the VO industry recently say that we should be booking 20%, with 10% being very attainable while still doing 20 plus auditions a day. What do you think? Okay. Well, the 20 plus auditions a day is key. 20 auditions that are right for you. 20 auditions that are right for you. But again, I would submit to you, you know, I'm a working person. I have been a working person. Um, and I'm booking at the 3.5 to 4.5 percentage. Um, Granted, I am in a different age category, right? I'm in an age category that's not so, um, it's not as working as the age category, 25 to 40. That's the prime working category in commercials. Prime. So, you have to factor that kind of thing in. You really have to factor in, are you a spokesperson? Are you a character actor? All these things matter to your percentages as well. Um, so I think 10 to 20% is a really high percentage booking rate. That's what I think. And my experience has borne that out. But again, I'm one person, so it's anecdotal, right? And I think like any entertainment focused industry, um, so much is wrapped up in our image, and what we're projecting out into the world, and we want to project success, right? And so my sensibility is that people are all of us are working less than what we let on. I talk to people in every part of the industry, beginners, intermediate, advanced, legends. I know them all. I have interaction with them all. And they're all saying the same thing right now, which is, where is my work? Where did the work go? I am not working. What do I do? So I think to a certain degree, and again, I do want to stress, this is my opinion. I am one person, um, and it's anecdotal in that way. I think the vast majority of us are BSing our way through social media. That's what I think. So, again, you have to put together your own recipe of success, um, and do not be dissuaded from your successes by an industry leader saying you should be booking 10 to 20%. And if you're not successful. I don't buy that. I reject it. I refuse. This is not true. Um, so, Dan, I am auditioning for the things in my wheelhouse. Yeah, very good. The days of me sounding like someone in their teens or 20s or even 30s are over. I just don't bother. Same here. Same here. And every age bracket has its plum roles, you know? Um, I always looked forward to the day when I could reasonably and justifiably do uh, banking and investment kinds of things, retirement planning sorts of things. I don't know why. I think when I grew up in voiceover, I was listening to people like Lynette Meddy and Diane Pershing, and they had these beautiful voices of authority, you know, and I wanted that. I wanted to be a female, and I wanted to be an authoritative female, and I knew that that would happen with age. That would come with age. And so I enjoy what I do now. I'm happy to be in it, right? And I don't bemoan the fact that I'm not reading for things in my 20s. It's like I said, a couple times before, like when I was an on camera, on stage actor pursuing those things. It was like, oh, doing the ingenue, the lead ingenue, like that's what I wanted. I look back now and I go, oh God, those are the most boring roles. I have to say, they're so boring, right? Um, and it's the character, it's the supporting roles and the character actors that I go, oh, that is the juicy stuff. And frankly, in dubbing and video games and even animation, that's what I do, and I love it. And I am not the lead on any animated series anywhere, but I play a goofy, a crazy older character grandma weirdo, in other things, and it's only one episode, but I don't care. It's like I'm enjoying it, right? And so I think embracing where we are, whatever genre we're living in, like to embrace it and to welcome the work that comes along, in our age category. um yes, Dan, I've embraced my aging voice. Grandpas are cool. Totally. Totally. um Genevieve, just soaking it in. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad. Let me get to another here. Another question that came up. Uh, let's see. Although it's toughy, since there can be such a difference between the auditions one has access to on pay to plays versus someone relying solely on agent submissions. Um, yeah, I think there is a difference, but again, you know, um, this is where we can kind of wrest control of our careers with pay to play stuff. It's interesting. My sister's had an interesting time. She lives in Alaska. She lives in Anchorage, and she's been a theater teacher and an actor there and a playwright, and is now retired, and so decided to take up voiceover, which she had done earlier in her life, and so she's taken it up, and of course it's a brand new world for her, and she's not represented, so she's working on pay to plays, and she had sort of immediate success right out of the gate, and then nothing, right? Nothing, like for almost 2 years, nothing, right? And so she was very deflated by that, and then decided to give it a whirl again, and really began to engage the algorithms of Voice 123. And she would get sent stuff that was not right for her. Even though like she took the Natasha Marchevka's class, uh, on how to work Voice 123, right? She took that and redesigned everything in her profile, and then just stopped getting auditions. So she was super frustrated by that, but she wasn't really engaging the algorithm, right? And when Voice 123 would send commentary like, was this audition right for you? Before that, she would just kind of blow that email off, right? And now she started answering them like, no, it's not correct for me. I am not 24, right? And as soon as she started engaging the algorithm, and the algorithm could plug that stuff in, that she started to get more auditions that were right for her. And consequently, she has started getting callbacks. She has started getting way more, likes and positive affirmation, and she has started booking again, right? So how are you engaging the pay to play stuff, right? You have to do it with the same mindset of like, I'm not just going to accept the thing just because they send it to me. It has to fit who I am and what I'm doing. um and again, I feel like pay to play requires so much more of a person. You are the one with the reins. I mean, to a certain extent, we're all, each of us is always the one with the reins, right? But when you have an agent relationship and it's a good relationship and they know who you are and what you can do, and they send you appropriate stuff, it can feel like they're the ones with the reins. But in that instance, you're sharing the reins, right? And it's like you're both in the front seat, and each of you is contributing to the driving of your career, right? In pay to play, you are the one. There isn't another person you can call, at voice 123 and go, hey, so what's up? With what I'm being sent, or how are we doing? What do you think? Can I get more of this? Or fewer of those? You have to do all of that by engaging the algorithm, and that is a full-time job in my estimation, and it's the people who treat it as such that do well on pay to play. They don't stop. They don't give up after 3 weeks or a month or 3 months of not being able to quite figure it out, not quite booking, as much as they want to. They keep at it, right? So, um, I think being on Voice 123 requires far more of an entrepreneurial spirit. That's my opinion there. And years ago, I sort of attempted to get onto pay to play sites, and I realized, like, oh, I do not have the constitution for this. I do not have the constitution. I'm not driven that way. I'm not. I was going to say I'm embarrassed to admit, but I'm actually not. I'm just not driven that way. I'm driven in a different way, and that's perfectly fine, and I accept that about myself, and I don't berate myself for it. So, let me see. There was one other question. I'm going kind of long today. Sorry. Um, let's see. Okay, this is a little bit off topic, but um, let's see. This is from Maggie uh, McMillan, and it's about agents. It's about regional agents. Um, I have a Chicago agent and an LA agent, and one of my goals has been to get one or two regional agents. Has anyone had luck with that? If they're just submitting their website demos through email, it seems many agents now only listen to demos that come with a referral, and even then it can be tough. If you belong to a demographic that is super common, real, relatable, Caucasian mom, that's a little bit harder because it's so common. Any tips for getting regional representation if you're currently not booking a ton at the moment? And interested in how union status might impact one's choices of securing regional representation. Okay. I do think it's hard without a referral. Um, but that said, most of us know people who know our work and believe in our work and can refer. Maybe I'm being naive about that. It's entirely possible. I do think it always helps to have a referral. I do. It also helps if you're already represented elsewhere, particularly in the major cities. Um, and I do think it's harder right now if you're in probably the biggest, most common demographic. I think that's true. But just because that's true doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just requires tenacity and stick to itiveness. You know, you don't just try once, and if they say, no, not this time, you go, oh, well, I couldn't do it. No, you go, okay, perhaps I will talk to you again in 6 months, and see how your roster is and if there's space for me. And you keep your eyes and ears open and your heart open and your hands open, to um, interacting with people and building relationships. And it's no small thing. Again, I I do beat the drum of the importance of attending a conference now and again because you actually meet people in real life. And I don't think there's a substitute for that. I don't. Um, because if you're good at what you do, even if you're in a common demographic, if people like you and get along with you and have an affinity for you personally, once they have a space, they're more apt to go to you, you know? So I think that that's always cool to do, I think that's always wise and a good thing to do. And we have to hold the long view. We have to. Um, a relationship that you build, in VO Atlanta in 2024 may come to fruition in 2026. That's how it works. That's the nature of the beast. So, I think I've yapped at you long enough. I hope that that's been helpful to you. Um, again, don't be, God, it's a balance. I want to say, don't be discouraged when people tell you, oh, you should be booking at 10 to 20%. And I offer myself as an example of someone who works and earns a living. Uh, uh, um, it's become an increasingly modest living, but that makes sense. There's a cycle to our work. We aren't like everybody else who the longer you've been in the business, the more money you make because you get raises every year. That's not how we work. It isn't. Um, so keep that in mind, right? I am a working person. I do good work, quality work, right? Consistent work. I work consistently. And I'm at around 4% booking ratio. All right. So I offer myself up to you as an example. um, and really try to be a detached observer of what's going on in your career, and seek to increase the number of auditions that you get that are really right for you. Really right for you. Auditioning is king. So I will leave you with that. Um, Feel free to post questions on this thread at any time. I will see them. And always, feel free to contact me any which way you can through this app or through my website, kbest.com or trustandbebrave.com. You can all those email things drop into my inbox. But yeah, feel free to reach out with any questions, any comments. And if you're getting this on the replay, same goes, right? Just because it's over doesn't mean you can't post a question or a comment. Okay. All right. Mwah! And see you in a couple weeks. Yeah. I hope everybody has a great end of October and a happy Halloween.